Here we are. Good evening, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Showtime TV. I'm your host, Omar Rashada. This evening, we have a very special program. As you know, most of you know, I always do an annual show on domestic violence awareness month. So tonight, it's going to be one of those programs that we're going to do it again. We're going to educate the community on the domestic violence. So joining me right now in conversation is Ms. Sue Frost. She's with the Child Inc. Incorporated. Ms. Frost, good evening, and thank you for being a guest on Showtime TV.
Good evening, and thank you so much for having me here on behalf of Child Inc.
No problem at all. So we have another guest. I think she kind of went off. She'll be back on. But nevertheless, so if we can just start on, if you can define, what is domestic violence, and what are the different types of domestic violence? Because some people think domestic violence is just physical, but it's more than just physical. So if you could just get into the definition of what is domestic violence.
Oh, sure. Well, it is more than just physical, and domestic violence is really characterized by violence of various sorts toward an intimate partner. So it starts there, but it can be various types of abuse. It can be verbal abuse. It can be threats, bullying, belittling, intimidation. It can be financial abuse. It can be interfering with someone's livelihood. It can be interfering with their credit. It can be sabotaging any of the above, interfering with their job and their way of getting to their job, interfering with paying their bills. So it really intentionally sabotaging that person, whether it be spouse or partner. It can be threatening people that they love, children, pets, or even threatening to commit suicide if that person leaves them. It can be diminishing your self-esteem, keeping track of where you are. So it can be various things before or even while it is physical. And it can also be isolating you from other people, your family, friends, social supports, and all of these things can add up to making it more difficult for you to leave.
Right. Okay, and joining us also in conversation is Pamela Brooks. She's from the Delaware Coalition Against Domestic Violence. We just started off, Pamela, with this emphasizing what is domestic violence and different types of domestic violence. So I don't know if you have anything that you want to add.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Domestic violence to me is in part emotional, and mostly for me, it was physical. But it started with name calling. It started with controlling finances. It started with isolating me from my family. So in essence, it's two parts for me. It started with isolating me and controlling me. And then ultimately it ending in my children having to make a phone call to save my life. So it was two parts for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now joining us in conversation is also a survivor of domestic violence. She's getting her camera together. She's no stranger to being a guest on my show. We have Candice Davis. Candice, good evening, and thank you for being a guest on the show tonight. Good to see you. I know you get your camera together, but I'll bring you in a second, Candice. You two ladies, you come from two well-respected organizations, Child Incorporated and Delaware Coalition Against Domestic Violence. So before we go further on the show, I want you to start off by just informing the audience what is it that your organization does, and just give us a background history of your organization and what services are offered in your organization. We'll start off with Sue.
Okay, well, first, we have a 24/7 hotline, 302-762, 302-762-6110. So let me say it again, 302-762-6110. And that is for most of Newcastle County. There's another one for, this is not ours, but for Kent and Sussex County, 302-422-8058. So for Child Inc., people call that hotline 24/7, and that is for shelter or just to explore what resources are available to those people. We bring people into 2 of our shelters who are immediately fleeing violence, and they can just call that, or sometimes they're referred to us by the police. And that's among our services. We have community health advocates that deal with people that are in the community that have not left yet, but they're trying to work out either health issues or other issues. Maybe they haven't had the need to leave yet. We have advocates in the courts that help people obtain protections from abuse. And so it's our staff, but they're stationed in the courthouses that can support people and walk them through that process. We have counseling for children and for adults, and we have support groups that's free. We have classes, we have parenting classes, anger management classes. We have family visitation centers right at Child Inc. There's also another family visitation center at the Hudson Service Center. Those are for people that are sharing custody but want to have a safe place that they can go and either have visitation or exchange for custody without incident.
All right, okay, and then Pamela, if you could talk about the Delaware Coalition Against Domestic Violence, located at 100 West 10th Street, Wilmington, Delaware, 19801.
So I can speak, I'm wearing 2 hats, Omar. Not only am I affiliated with DCADV, which stands for, again, Delaware Coalition Against Domestic Violence, I am also a survivor. I utilize DCADV's site from a perspective of not exactly such as offering programs, but connecting you to services and utilizing resources such as organizations like the state of Delaware. If you are fighting homelessness, you could connect with the Division of State Service Centers, and or if you are in need of food benefits, we would reroute you to connect to the appropriate state agency. DCADV is unique in that we have national connections. We have tentacles throughout the state of Delaware, working with organizations such as the Food Bank of Delaware, basically connecting a potential client. So if you are to go to our site, which is dcadv.org, that's dcadv.org, the light that you are looking for starts there. There's a multitude of services and connectors that will provide you with the connection to get to services such as childinc.org. The other hat that I wear is also that I am a member of Weaver, which is Women Empowered Against Violence in Every Relationship, a subcommittee that projects and adds support to connect those that are in the community suffering from domestic violence, as well. The Women of Task Force, Women of Color Task Force, WOTC. Again, all of these connectors are the light at the end of the tunnel when you're in need and you don't have the resources. You can go to our site and they will reconnect you.
Gotcha. There are those that may be victims of domestic violence, and some may see a little change in behavior, if you will, among those who are victims of domestic violence, but may not necessarily know what's going on with them on a personal level. So I just want to throw this question up in the air. What are some of the warning signs that may indicate that someone is a victim of domestic violence?
If I could jump in, I will say for me, I became isolated from the world. The first sign was isolating me from my family, because obviously if you are abusing, you do not want family members, your coworkers to sort of sway you into identifying that you are either emotionally or physically being abused. So I would say first and foremost, it started for me with isolating me and pulling me away, and then controlling the finances, and as well the belittling. Things like nobody likes you, nobody cares. And after a while, you start to believe it. So thus your self-esteem goes down. You feel isolated and you feel that you're unloved and unappreciated and undervalued. Thus, you start to succumb. You succumb to whatever the initiative is in his mind, whether it be that you stay at home, you don't have friends because you're not valued, you don't have family because you're not valued. All of those are, to me, warning signs in the beginning.
And they all sound like, those statements sound like emotional abuse as well, it's affecting one's self-esteem. And then you're also looking at post-traumatic stress disorder. So do you see cases where it just goes beyond counseling, and maybe the individual had picked up a mental health diagnosis, maybe depression, PSTD, and may need to see a psychiatrist or psychologist to help her or him cope with being a victim of or survivor of domestic violence, or even being a current victim of domestic violence? Do you see that quite often?
Absolutely. As a trauma-informed approach trainer, you will learn and discover that the traumas that you endured sort of were like a gateway to sort of kind of put you in a more higher ratio to endure and almost allow some of the traumas that you experience as an adult. For example, someone who is a child who witnesses physical or emotional abuse, that becomes the norm for that child.
Right.
If, in fact, the mother or father or whomever is in that circumstance does not get out of that situation, that eventually over time can become the norm. And what does that do to the child psychologically and physically? It puts them at a higher ratio for physical abuse themselves. Either they become physical and become an abuser and basically repeat the cycle. It puts them at a higher ratio for chronic disorders such as high blood pressure, such as diabetes. Because think about it, trauma, it's almost as though you're wearing a boulder around your neck every day. And each day you are, fighting that bear because that's what you witnessed as a child. And if you bear that over time, what do you think that does to your body? It promotes and it encourages bad behaviors. And I don't like to use that word, but not the best behaviors, such as maybe overeating, maybe turning to alcohol or drugs and substances. So trauma starting from your childhood, if not understood and aware of the effects, it can potentially cause harm in the future.
Right. So you want to chime in?
I'm sorry, did you say Sue?
Yeah, I'm saying,
Yeah. Trauma, and aside from the bad behaviors, has tremendous ramifications on your health, on your heart, risk of stroke, all of those involuntary actions. And we tend to, I hear, and it was just, you and I discussed it by email, the judgment, why people, why don't they go? Why don't people move on? Why do they stay? And I think that I've seen victims. I work directly in rapid rehousing, and I can mention the benefits of that, but I see people feeling shame, judged, and we don't know what people are dealing with behind the scenes.
Yes.
And there's the emotional part of just the danger in trying to get away, and then all the things that we mentioned, of being threatened, being demeaned, diminished, the psychological abuse, but then the actual literal fear in trying to leave and physical danger. But then Delaware has, because I'm in rapid rehousing, Delaware is over 21,000 units, apartments short of affordable housing. So that you take all of what we've already mentioned and then put it into practical terms of affordable housing, and it doubles the problem.
Absolutely. Candice, are you there? You got your camera straight? I'm not sure. I just wanted to see if I could bring you in the conversation and not, I know Candice is there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
here. I have been sick for the last 2 days, so I
Oh,
didn't miss, but I also know what I may look like visually at the moment. And so I still wanted to participate, but I will most likely not have my camera on. And I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, Omar. We go back, so you know this is not, I'm a little congested right now.
glad that you joining us, and welcome to the show. So I want you, and you're a survivor of domestic violence. So you want to share just your experience of what may have happened to you, or whatever way you want to bring it as a survivor of domestic violence, you can bring it.
So when you asked me initially to participate, I had not even remembered that I shared that, because that is not a part of my life that I speak openly about as of yet. And I was hesitant for a while because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to become vulnerable. There are going to be people who may see this that know me and will probably view me differently when they see me in the street. And I think that kind of goes along to what's been said already. And I realized that what I want to share is, I would probably consider it more partner abuse, not necessarily the domestic violence in the sense that most people think, oh, it's a husband, your paramour, or something along those lines. And I realized that I have been experiencing that since probably high school. And what that did was it formed or guided, I believe, the way that I entered relationships, the way I felt about myself in relationships, and what I allowed to take place in relationships. And to just put it blatantly, I went through a lot of verbal abuse, a lot of emotional abuse, that beating down of my conscious, I was initially a very self-confident young lady. But throughout the course of these 2 or 3 relationships that I had when I was younger, my self-confidence kind of it dwindled rapidly. I did get to a point where one of my former partners put their hands on me. And I cried one weekend, and I cried so hard that I broke the blood vessels in my face. So I looked like I had, these red freckles. And having to go to high school, and explain to people kind of what happened, was very difficult for me. And then I found that it caused me to isolate. So I have become very introverted. And, people that know me may not believe that, but I'm probably the most introverted extrovert that you will encounter. I really don't. I think people view me a particular way, and then that causes me to view myself in a particular way. But I think that my experiences shaped why I am so passionate about working with young people, being trauma informed as well. And as a teacher, as a counselor, as a therapist myself, I want to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence to help someone else not experience what I went through. because at that time I didn't have the resources of who to talk to, who I could go to for help, where the resources were. So I definitely had to make sure that I was well versed in that as I became more self-aware of the abuse that I suffered.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was very, very touching stories, and it's a learning experience for all of us. But one of the things that people tend to do when it comes to domestic violence is that people tend to blame the victim. Even the victim themselves may blame herself or himself of being a victim of domestic violence. For example, well, if you would have kept your mouth shut and not said anything, he wouldn't have hit you. Or if I would have had his dinner ready for him or ironed his clothes, I wouldn't have got him upset. Or he only beat me because he loves me. So, and then, I want to open up the discussion about why victims should not be blamed, for being victims of domestic violence, if you will. Anyone can chime in.
I'm happy to chime in. This was just 2 weeks ago. My two sons, whom I call my two guardian angels, because they saved my life that night by locking themselves in a room and calling 911 on their own father. The point of isolation is to demean. The point of the name call, point of keeping you away is so that there's no guilt on their part. They don't want you to feel as though you have any power. I've learned in my psychology classes that there's power and control in words. You don't have to touch anyone, but that's where it starts. It starts with the why are you wearing that? Or why are you doing that? You're stupid, or you're not attractive. All words, all forms of control. For anyone that's out there listening, know that those actions are wrong. They are all methods of control, all words of demeaning, all words to keep you in your situation. Know that there is hope, and it just starts with you making yourself aware and learning what control is, whether it be emotional or physical. Knowledge is power.
I could add to that, and
Mhm.
I'm sure Candice maybe wants to comment as well. Power and control. Power and control. That's what it is about. It's not about you making a mistake or doing the wrong thing, or that drugs or alcohol were involved and they had too much to drink. Drugs or alcohol don't help, but drinking too much does not make someone an abuser. It's all about control. And that is the problem.
Okay. Go ahead, Candice.
I will add to that. I think we and I don't like to call myself a victim. I prefer to refer to myself as a survivor. As a survivor, I had to learn that what the perpetrators were doing and saying to me, they were really projecting how they felt about themselves onto me. And it took me a very, very long time to understand that it was not my fault, because for a while I did internalize, what was I doing wrong? Why wasn't I good enough? What could I do to prevent these behaviors from happening? But in reality, I needed to learn that this wasn't about me at all. It was about the other individuals, because unfortunately there were more than one. It was about the other individuals dealing with their own, I call them inner demons, and being unable to control those demons. So then they projected that on me, and they wanted to control me because it made them feel safe knowing that they had control over someone. And it really is not just always about that physical, because I've always said a bruise disappears, but when you break someone down emotionally, those words, they will replay in someone's head over and over and over again. So it becomes more difficult. And I found for me that it was almost, I became numb to words. So I think that I had to learn that, and I want more survivors to understand that part, that the perpetrator is really projecting their own inabilities to control onto you. I guess that's it. It's just very difficult at times.
Right, right. You know, Pam, you touched on something earlier about why victims stay. Um, However, you have victims who leave, but may also go back. So let's ask the question. Let's ask a follow-up question. Why do victims go back to abusive relationships, or to the abuser? And then I'm not going to say abusive relationship, but why do they go back to the abuser? How do you respond to that?
I think this is a two-part answer. I think it lends to self-esteem concerns. And also, I feel as though it's a financial control that's, the victim, or I should say, I would like to say survivor, but the party that's in the circumstance may be trying to leave, and then they actually go and leave, and then they realize that, financially, fiscally, it's just challenging for them to do it on their own. And some of them risk that they're afraid that their children, they could lose custody of their children if they wind up in a homeless shelter. Some don't want to ask because they don't want people to know about their personal circumstances, because they feel like, I'm supposed to be able to provide for my children. If I tell Susie, they could, tell either the police, and I could lose custody. It's a pride thing. Sometimes it's just merely, I don't want people to know my personal circumstance. So I think there's not one answer in particular for each circumstance. I think it's multiple issues that keep a person. But I can say, for me, I just decided the last time that it was absolutely it. I almost lost my life. And I was in the hospital room watching my two little boys who lost their innocence within 3 hours, had never been exposed to this type of a circumstance, have to help their mom because I could no longer see, I could no longer hear, and I was bleeding and I needed help. My children made the decision to help mom, and it should not have been that way. So I vowed in that moment I was going to leave, but not everyone has sometimes the ability, or fiscally cannot leave, or emotionally. So that's my answer.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, one of the things when we look at domestic violence, the focus is always, well, I would say 95%, the focus is on the victim. I want to talk about the abuser. When we talk about the victim getting services, does Child Inc. have services, for example, counseling services for those who are abusers? Because, abuser it has an important role in the domestic violence. Some say it has all. The abuser is the cause of domestic violence. So, what services are available out there for abusers who want to change or who need to change to stop being abusers? Does Child Inc. still have those services?
We absolutely do. We have anger management classes. We do have counseling for the abuser. The anger management classes are, self-appointed. People go, they need to go, but there are classes that are court mandated, and they can make a difference. We've seen real change made there.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
you have to wonder, what happened to that person? What happened to that person? So when change happens, it's a remarkable thing.
Right, right. I want to go back because you facilitate or run the housing program for Child Inc. What is the criteria for victims to be enrolled in the housing program? How does it work? For example, someone walks into your office and say they need housing services from Child Inc. Walk us through the process.
Well, they probably wouldn't walk in, they would get a referral.
Okay,
So people, and it's for people who have become homeless due to domestic violence.
Right.
And then they're referred, if through the hotline, they're referred through the shelter, they're referred through some of our domestic violence resources, our community health associates in Child Inc. We do have a waiting list, but then once we do the referral, there's a process, a prioritization tool, and the people that are served first. Basically, it's the need and the vulnerability first, and then so on down the line. We try to serve people as quickly as we can. And it's a two-pronged service. It comes with case management, so that we want to basically serve the family, the individual or family, make sure that they have the resources they need. That's different with each family. It could be legal services, it could be health services, it could be any number of things that we want to make sure that we connect with what they need. And then as far as rapid rehousing, it can include a security deposit, first month's rent, and contribution toward the rent. For the months after that can vary from 3 months to 9 months, but it depends on the financial picture of that family. And, if they need help either keeping their job or finding a job, we are, help them do that. We want to, the term I like to use is to help set people up for success. That when we make ourselves redundant, they are starting a new life. And that's what we do. So.
right. And while they're starting a new life, some may still be in fear of being attacked by their abuser. I know someone mentioned power, the protective abuse order. What is it? How does one access to it? How long is it good for?
Well, and that's one of the first things that we ask if someone calls the hotline, and we have, as I mentioned, staff members in the family court to help people access that. They don't have to, we don't require that they have that in order to get into the rapid rehousing program, but we can make that accessible. There's also programs now that you can keep your address confidential. So each case is very individual, specific. You can keep your address confidential. If someone says to us, I don't know what the problem is, but he finds me everywhere I go, the police could actually scan your car to see if there's a device in your car that is being tracked. So it really depends on, the severity of the case and how many measures are involved in keeping that person safe so that they can be safe in their new home. Of course, as soon as they come to shelter, our locations are confidential, so they're not going to be found there. But beyond that, we form a safety plan together to fit their individual needs.
Right. You mentioned safety plan. Also, I want to touch back on, I think it was mentioned earlier, escape plan. I want to ask Candice and Pam, being survivors of domestic violence, if you want to talk about how you came about to escape being in an abusive relationship, or if you want to, any recommendations on how one can develop an escape plan in regards to leaving the abusive relationship. So any one of you can start off. But we can start with Candice. She's off mute.
So as I said, my first few encounters, I was young and I wasn't thinking on that level. But throughout my work, I became very close with someone who experienced this. And what she endured for her child, she stayed for a while, but she started to save money, here and there as she could. She would put it in a different account. And she was looking for places to move, all while, enduring this relationship that she had, until one day she said the abuser left to go to work, and she had already been packing up the things that she felt she would need for her and her son. And they left and they relocated, and he knew nothing. He knew nowhere. He didn't know anything about their residence. Myself, if I were to look at it now, I would probably say working with someone to assist. When I've taken victims of who have been abused, or anyone who's been abused, to the hospital for an evaluation, I know that there are workers there that will refer you out, and the police officers have also stated, hey, let's create a plan. Let's come up with a plan. If you're not going to leave now, then let's help you create something, or at least figure out a safe place to go. Again, when I was going through my situations, I could always go home, to my parents' house, or I was already residing with my parents and just enduring these situations. But again, now as I'm older, I realize the importance of that. So that is one of the things when I'm mentoring and I'm talking with young people, is making sure that they can identify safe places, safe people, because I believe that someone should always know if there's something going on. And as has been stated earlier, sometimes we like to keep that to ourselves. Just encouraging everyone that I've dealt with to know that there is no shame in what you are dealing with, and having someone who can support and understand. Even if you just establish a safe text, that you text the number 3 or something along those lines, then that individual knows to kind of get that plan rolling for you.
Absolutely. And Pam, you want to chime in?
Yes, absolutely. What I established was a plan between myself and my boys. My sons at the time were little guys. They were 9 and 11. So what I did was I purchased them cell phones. When they would get off the bus, they knew that they had to go straight home. And this was after the attack. But of course, we had to go back to some sort of normalcy. So I asked them to send me a text to let me know that they were home, or they just sent me a number, which, it was either the number 6. So we had established sort of a code system. So I knew when they were home and in the house. Also, for me, it was important that I sought out a legal, legal representation. It was important for me to know that if I decide to leave, that if he were to show up, what would be the ramifications? So I pursued, there was initially a temporary PFA, and then I pursued a year, and then I pursued a 2-year. And because he continued to stalk often, I felt it was important to protect myself and my boys. So our system was that we would stay in communication. They knew that they were not to go outside until I was home, and they would stay close when they were outside. And they had a positive support system of friends that would look out for them. Our neighbors also were instrumental as well. And they knowing that mom was not going to allow him to come back. I think that was most important for them, because I think that they would have, I think I would have lost my boys if I had let him come back. So I had to assure them that I was going to do whatever it took to protect them. And it started with keeping them in their normal environment. We also participated in family-based therapy that was court ordered by the commissioner. We would go to Jewish Family Services. They have an amazing program as well. For visitation, we also use Child Inc. So all of these steps put us back to some sort of, I won't say normalcy, but it just allowed us to kind of go on and move forward with a safety net of support systems.
Absolutely, absolutely. Earlier we touched on what are the warning signs for those who may be victims of domestic violence. But Sue, I want to ask, what are the warning signs for those who may be abusers, if you will?
Warning signs to spot them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, for the person that might suspect their partner is has potential, the beginning of feeling controlled, wanting to know about your whereabouts, maybe under the guise of "I miss you," asking questions, or wanting to control what you wear, that kind of thing, a little bit too possessive, a little, jealousy. These are warning signs. Anything physical that's aggressive is a warning sign.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Or verbal, that's inappropriate.
Verbal, emotional. Absolutely.
That to her, not to cut you off, I apologize. I call it W's. It's the what are you doing? Why are you there? Or why are you doing this? And when? I call them the 3 W's. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Absolutely. And Pam, I want to stay with you for a moment because you touched on something earlier at the top of the program that was very significant. You talked about children, the effects that domestic violence has on the children, and how a little boy, it can be learned behavior from him to become an abuser if he sees his father or uncle or someone else, or a mentor or any other adult male abusing their woman as a solution to trying to control her. But let's talk about the young lady, because she may look at domestic violence and it could be a learned behavior for her as well. Oh, if I don't do it right, I might get beaten. It may be acceptable behavior on her part to say a man beating on a woman. So talk about the significance of children. Should they seek counseling or therapy for those who may witness or be in a family where domestic violence is involved?
Absolutely. As we attended court ordered, and I emphasize that, and I'm so glad that it was court ordered because I would have sought out therapy. The therapist explains what the differences are from a perspective that you cannot exert control over another person. And to explain to a child, whether they're male or female, that what they are doing is wrong. And that you, as a young man, you have to understand that these actions are wrong, and that you have to identify, and even with your friends, you have to speak up. Know that these are dysfunctional behaviors that can lead to a lot of ramifications, such as, losing that person that you may dearly love, but because you don't know how to perhaps express your love, but that is not love, that's dysfunction. And knowing that these are inappropriate actions, learning it at a young age, which is why I will speak, on any mountain or in any valley to children, because it starts with them. Educating them at a young age on these are the signs. These are actions of a potential abuser. Understanding that and then processing that, I think will encourage a productive and positive adult.
Right. Candice, you and I, we went to high school together. And I didn't find out till I was on Channel 28 that you were a survivor of domestic violence. But one of the things that I admire so much about you is that you give so much back to the community. You're working with youth, working with young ladies, mentoring. You're very educated, all that great stuff. So talk about the significance of you just being able to just be a strong lady, strong, beautiful lady, if you will, because you overcame so much. And for victims, it can take them down. They can suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. They can suffer from the mental illness and be depressed for the rest of their lives. But you kept a strong will and everything. So for those who are survivors of domestic violence, talk about the significance of not letting it stop you from living a full, entertaining life, if you will.
Well, first of all, let me say thank you. Oh my goodness gracious. I had to turn my pain into power. And what I was previously feeling, that lack of self-confidence, that insecurity, I did a 180 with those feelings and I turned them all into positivity. And I realized the way that I felt, I never wanted another individual in this world, friend or foe, to feel that way. And as I journaled a lot when I got to college, and even still now, and I'm trying to write my book and about my experiences. And I realized if I had had someone very candidly share with me at a younger age some of their experiences, I may have recognized some of these warning signs, some of these red flags. And that is my goal. And so while I know I'm not going to be able to save every individual, every young person that I encounter, it is my goal. It's my heartfelt, my ploy for in life is to make sure that no one goes through what I did. And then even with working, with CDCP, some of the cases that I saw there and some of those families and these young women who, as you've said, they see domestic violence and they think that that's what a relationship looks like. These toxic relationships, these dysfunctional families, they believe that that is what a healthy family is. And while it's not always easy, you do want to kind of teach, mold, and model for them. You don't want to forcefully feed it to them, such as this, what you're seeing is wrong, and this is what you need to do, because they become resistant to that. So I think developing the rapport with the young people was important for me, and still learning myself. And when I see, one person that I have impacted who said, you know what, Miss Candice, Candice, because of what you told me, I left that situation. I realized my value. I realized my worth. Then that gives me more motivation to continue what I'm doing, and to make sure that, I have children now. I have a daughter and I have a son. And I would be devastated if either of my children experienced either type of situation. If, my son was a victim or a perpetrator, or if my daughter experienced anything like that, it would devastate me, because I really want them to know that if it does happen, that there are resources, but to pay attention to those warning signs. Someone who's yelling all the time, who belittles you, that may be a sign. No matter how much you want to care about someone, sometimes you have to care about them from a distance, because you have to care about yourself first.
Absolutely. And Pam, I want to put that same question to you, because you're also strong. You help others. You work in a profession once you were probably receiving services with, but now you're a role model to other survivors, and you're a professional in this field. So talk about the significance of being a strong lady, just doing your thing,
Omar, I'm just humbled because when I sat on the sofa that night, and I just tried to reflect back on, why did this happen to me? So I just decided, okay, I can't come up with that explanation, but I can move forward and I can help, even if it is one person. has a family. And if that young lady or young man, if they are experiencing domestic violence and they are hearing my voice, I'm in the room, or I'm some way connecting with them, I am hoping that they have the strength to know, if I could do it, you can too.
Absolutely. And so, you being a professional in this field, just talk about the significance of why you decided to work in the domestic violence arena. Is it to help others? Or what was your reason for? Because it's not an easy field to be in, because you see so much, and it can be very emotional and physically draining. But you kept it strong, and you've been doing this work for quite some time. And just talk about why you decided to work in this arena.
Well, I've seen women impacted by a lot in my life. Let's say that it's close to my heart. And I'm sure the other women know, and maybe you from your mother, 1 in 4 women are going to be impacted by severe domestic violence in their lifetime. So that means we know people, whether they say so or not, we know people that are impacted by violence. This is such a necessary service that you're providing, having us talk about this, talking about the resources in our community. So yeah, I was a coach before this. I still consider myself a coach. And it is very close to my heart, because I know women that have gone through it in various forms. It's an honor to be able to work with women, and there are men and those that identify as men that go through it too, that we have served at Child Inc. It's extremely necessary service, and it's a privilege to be able to connect people with the services that they so very much need.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we close out the show, I want to start off with Sue. If Child Inc. has any upcoming activities, if you want to provide us with the domestic violence number for those who need to seek help.
Well, first, the hotline again, because it's so important, 302-762-6110. And I'll give you our other number, because we have holiday helpers coming up. It's almost the same number as 302-762-6111. Deirdre Harper is our shelter director, and she can help people, anyone that wants to help with a gift toward families in our shelter at the holidays and our holiday helpers. Please call Deirdre. And if there are any landlords out there that want to help with our rapid rehousing program, we have quite a wonderful program to help people get back on their feet. And we can just call me, Sue Frost, at the same number, and I'll tell you all the benefits of helping people, individuals and families, start their lives again. And I thank you for all the exposure that you're giving us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Pam, so you want to give any contact information for Delaware Coalition Against Domestic Violence? Any upcoming programs?
Well, I can say we just celebrated an anniversary just a couple of weeks ago. We have an annual event, and it was absolutely amazing. We have subcommittees that are very, very busy. We have an event taking place tomorrow on financial awareness through the Women of Color Task Force. I encourage folks to visit dcadv.org. It will offer you a connector to hope. Thank you.
All right. Okay, Candice, about 1 minute. You have any closing words of encouragement? Anything you want to end us with?
I just would like to say to anyone who is watching or is experiencing anything similar to what has been described, you've heard some amazing resources this evening. If all else fails, please call 911. Don't be afraid to let someone know, and just know that your value and you are worth it, and it is not your fault.
All right, ladies, thank you for being a guest of tonight's program. For those who are watching, please like, subscribe, and share. So ladies, if you have any upcoming events, or Candice, you have anything you want to talk about on the show, just let me know and we'll do it again.
Sounds
Right.
good. An honor.
Thank
Thank you.
All right,
Nice.
thank you. Have a blessed and safe week.
You as well. Thank you.